We demystify what goes on behind the therapy room door. Join us on this voyage of discovery and co-creative conversations. This is the Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast.
With Bob Cooke
and Kellie Barratt.
Hello and welcome to the Therapy Show Behind Closed Doors. I'm Kellie Barratt and I'm here with the wonderful Mr. Bob Cooke.
Oh, hey. Leading on from the last podcast. Well done.
The object constancy continues.
Yes.
So Bob, here we are on episode number 222 and our title is 5 TA Concepts That Make for Effective Therapy.
Great topic. And for the people who are listening who perhaps, don't know TA, but perhaps they might know basic bits of TA. I hope you find it useful as perhaps new concepts to think about. For people who like TA or know TA, maybe this will refresh your skills, and maybe you can think yourself what concepts you particularly like from TA, which you may or may not agree with us about.
Yeah,
great. Okay, so did you kill that fruit fly?
I was trying. So I am normally quite good at killing them, so when it comes, I might have to just
no, I was being provocative there because I think I would try to save the fly.
I know. Well, I have had this with a client actually in my office, and I realised that I wouldn't dream of killing a spider or a butterfly or a bee. But
it's just a word. I understand that. Okay, so here is something for you. Eric Berne, who was the creator of, as you know, you trained for years and years in TA, and I did. Eric Berne, who was the creator of TA, really in 1958, his first book called Transactional Analysis came out in 1961. So we're talking about a therapeutic modality which goes back quite a way. And I don't know if he said this or Claude Steiner, prodigal son of Eric Berne, or is just passed down, but I've certainly heard this said, that you are a transactional analyst, TA therapist, if you think, ego states, transactional analysis proper, that's the understanding of complementary transactions, ulterior transactions, cross transactions, and how to track them. Script, and games.
Just those 4 things.
So if you think, ego states, transactional analysis proper, script, and games, you can call yourself a transactional analyst.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if Eric Berne would say that, but I reread Transactional Analysis again. His book. I'm not talking about all the other books. The original one in 1961. And his basic tenets were ego states, the first personality model that TA uses, an analysis and tracking of different transactions from ego states, which is transactional analysis proper, which he used in, especially in groups. He was a psychiatrist in Carmel Hospital. Games, which his idea of repetitive patterns, victim, persecutor, that lot, and script. Now, if you read his book, there isn't many other concepts in it.
Well, they are quite complex concepts.
They're comprehensive. Because out of script, you've got script analysis, injunctions, counter injunctions, drivers, So out of games, you've got repetitive compulsion to repeat. You've got the Cartman triangle, which came later. Out of tracking, transactional as proper, you're helping people, talk about what transactions they operate from with a stimulus and a response, and there's different types of transactions. And then, of course, ego states, which is the major personality model of transactional analysis of parent, adult, child, and the breakdown of all that lot. So you're right, they're very comprehensive. I would say they are the pillars of what makes a transactional analyst. And then, of course, many other things got developed, which we might be going to talk about here. But I wanted to start there because they are known as the four major pillars of what makes up a transactional analyst. I don't know where I learned that, to tell you the truth, but so I don't know. But it's passed down, I think. But it makes sense because they're the most comprehensive templates, aren't they?
Yeah. And they, as you say, I mean, I love TA because I love
Well,
all.
you trained for years and years, Kelly, so I'm glad you like it.
But when you say those names, I feel like, oh yes, and yeah, I feel excited by them because they are very comprehensive. I suppose when you're learning, they feel very complex, but
Mm.
actually they do encompass everything that you might need.
There's been such a shift in the style of psychotherapy from Eric Berne's innovation in 1958 to today. The styles and maybe the emphasis has changed a lot in terms of Eric Berne, when he created transactional analysis as a working model, he thought about in terms of the aim of the therapy was to help the person have a more robust adult ego state. Whereas now, the TA therapists may have different approaches which are more psychodynamic and developmental.
Well, I guess for the listeners who aren't TA trained, they might not know that there's different schools of TA.
But
So,
they came after he died.
yes, well, his is termed the classic approach.
Yeah, but approaches like
Yes, approach.
redecision,
Yes.
cathexis, integrative. But that's all after he died. You're
Yeah.
quite right. So let's start then, Kelly. If we're talking about five particular concepts, or let's start. You do one, and I'll talk about one that you see as you're attached to, or pivotal, or you think about a lot, or guides your work. You could start. You start with one, and
I'll start with one. So I'm going to start with decontaminating the adult.
right now you are going to have to explain that. Now, for TA people, they might have an understanding of that. So you're really going to have to explain that for people who are
Yes.
just dipping into TA for the first time.
So from the ego state model, which is another one actually that I enjoy using. But so we've got the parent, adult, and child ego state. Parent and child kind of bleed into the adult.
Hmm.
And so and how I'm trying to strengthen the adult, I'm confronting the discount. So I'm confronting passivity, grandiosity, and the client discounting behavior. So it's kind of like a reality check. So the client will come in with ideas around something, and I'm confronting. And the confront is often a difficult word, isn't it? But what I mean is I'm challenging the reality of what the client is bringing.
Great. So an example of that would be for me, if we're talking about decontaminating the adult when there's a parent contamination. So it's when the client might believe all Scottish people are mean. That means their problem is they never go to Scotland. They don't mix with anybody who's Scottish. So there's a contamination. In other words, they accept parental slogans as adult reality.
Yes.
Yeah. So that would be one example of decontamination.
Yeah.
And then you would do a lot of reality testing and looking where that comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So I like the idea of strokes. Now,
Me too.
now, a stroke, according to Eric Berne, because he did touch on strokes in that first book, actually, but he talked about it more later. But he did talk about strokes in that first TA book. It's a unit of social recognition, and you can get positive strokes and negative strokes, and you can have verbal strokes and non-verbal strokes. So you can have people say, "I really like you, Kelly." So that's a pure sort of bullseye transaction, I hope, if you like. But it's a positive stroke, or they might say, well, I don't like you, Kelly, which is a negative stroke, but they're both verbal. No, you can have non-verbal, you can hug somebody, or you can slap them, so there's different types of, but they're both, all the examples are units of recognition.
Yeah.
And they're a bit like oxygen. So if we don't get recognized, then will shrivel up and die. So you know enough cases about people at extreme where they find, perhaps. And I was thinking of a case in France where they found two 3-year-olds in the woods or forests or deep forests, and they were almost psychotic because they'd had no recognition. So the lack of recognition is a problem. So we all know that babies, if they don't have positive recognition, will scream and scream, and negative recognition is better than nothing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we know clients can often come to you and they've been brought up with a diet of or crumbs, if you like, of negative recognition rather than a full meal of positive recognition. And one of the things I always talk to clients about, so I don't use TA language in the assessments, but I invariably ask them, are you hard on yourself? Which leads to the conversation about a negative narrative. Now, where that negative narrative comes from isn't from them. It's from, in therapy, they have to really get to understand this, but it's come from their past.
Yeah.
And that will be negative strokes.
Yeah.
So you can judge, if you like, if you want the word judge, or assess is a better word, a person's emotional health by their diet of strokes.
Yes, yes. And I'm thinking, oh yes, I use strokes a lot in couples work because I think couples are stroke deprived. But yeah, really useful stuff. I love that it's like oxygen.
Yeah. And I said I only did it today. Somebody came in and I said, are you hard? And she said yes. Then she's added up very hard on herself. And I said, well, so you want to transform to find some compassion in yourself and some positive narrative. And self-esteem will not grow in a world of negative narratives. So it's the same thing. So we need to help people develop a filter or a way of accepting positive strokes, especially if they've been in a world of negative recognition, because it'll be like another world to them.
Clients don't always readily accept them.
No, because that's what I said. If they've been brought up in a negative recognition or negative conditional recognition, if you like, then suddenly to be in a world, though someone giving positive strokes to them, they'll probably think, oh, what's the catch? Or they're trying to trick me here. So it's a process, not an event for the therapist to work out a cocktail of strokes or a way of thinking about this. So it's not a straightforward process, but it's a very important one.
Have we done a podcast on strokes? It kind of feels familiar.
Yes, not you and me.
Oh, right. No, did you do one with Jackie?
I've done at least a couple, Jackie.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a really good one if people are interested to go back to perhaps and listen to. I think it's a great bit of theory, personally.
And it's very important, I think, in the terms of building up, a positive working relationship and understanding how people think, feel, and behave and act from their history. Okay, number two.
Number two. So I'm going to go in with the drama triangle. So part of the game theory. I love the drama.
We'll have to explain this to people listening again.
Many people will know what this is. So the drama triangle, Cartman, it's actually a triangle, and on it is a persecutor, a rescuer, and a victim.
They're roles, are they?
They are roles, yes. Yeah. And people step into that position when they're not in their adult ego state. We'll probably come on to ego state soon. So when they're not problem solving and in the here and now, and they step into roles and then they invite somebody else into another role, and off we go around the drama triangle. And it's really easy for clients to understand. It's really easy for them to practice observing out in the world. I like it, and the clients seem to like it too.
Yeah, it's a good way to analyze what I might call games, which is a series of repetitive patterns leading to usually negative outcomes. So it's a good way to look at how those behavioral patterns are played out and how people step into these psychological roles of, we call them victim, persecutor, and rescuer here, and how that doesn't help communication and maybe quality of life.
And de-skills the client.
Definitely. Okay, well, I'll go for perhaps the most stable one of all diet, when you think of TA, and that's the personality model of parent, adult, child.
Yeah.
So it's the first thing I learned, probably, I would think. Is that true to say? When I was introduced to TA, probably was, because it's a personality model, and in training, particularly important to think of. It's how a person develops. It's a way of understanding how the personality develops, basically, and the idea that there's three parts of ourselves, which we can call in TA parent ego state, adult ego state, and child ego state. Now, interestingly enough, Freud, who is the father of psychotherapy, if you want to put it that way, though he was really the father of psychoanalysis, but psychotherapy came from that. His personality model was also three. Id, superego, and ego. Now, they're very different because the model of Freud is an unconscious model, and the model of Eric Berne, though he was obsessed with psychoanalysis in his earlier life, so whether he's a Freudian, I'm not so sure. But in his model of transactional analysis, is more of a conscious approach. And I don't want in the podcast particularly to go into the differences of the two models, but the idea anyway that we have three parts of the self. The adults are probably to the age you are now, like I'm 74, so if I'm coming from the 74-year-old part of me, that's called the adult. The child is the younger part of myself, so that could be any age, 16, 17, 7, or whatever parts we can move to. And then the parent ego state is the shoulds, the oughts, and the must, that we've taken on positively and negatively. And Eric Berne, of course, as he dealt with quite a lot of disturbed people, wanted people to have a much more robust sense of their own age so they could access resources around them to develop a higher quality of life and not to get stuck in the unconscious or younger self, which from that place doesn't have access to the psychological resources around them, or to get stuck in a parent ego state, which is really getting stuck in seeing the world in shoulds, oughts, and musts. So he wanted people to stay in the adult ego state. So that has always been a model I've followed, and it's been, for me, a very good model for assessing emotional health of clients that come in the room. And it's also given me a sort of barometer, a template for working. And as I've always worked developmentally, I tend to always go to the child ego state, the younger self. But remember that when you go with the younger self, the parent is still always there.
Yes.
So you're taking on the parent as well as the younger self when you're working at that developmental level. But it's always been an important model that I have used and I find very accessible. And when I talk to people, they like the accessibility of that model.
Yes, yes. And I like the functional model as well. So,
oh, yes, that model is called yeah, you're right. Yeah, off the back of that, there's another model, because the model I'm talking about is more structural. But you're talking about another model that Berne also talked about in that book, which is the functional model, which is perhaps some people might know more.
They might actually, because that's the bit where the parents divided into controlling parent and nurturing parent, and the child is separated into adapted child and free child.
Yeah.
So I think probably a lot of people will have heard, well, they will have heard of critical parent. It sometimes gets called critical parent.
Yeah. So you're right, probably. Yeah, that derivative of what I've talked about, people know a lot of nurturing parent, and I think counsellors and therapists use those terms quite interchangeably.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, you're next, I think.
Next one. I'm going to go with symbiosis.
Oh, that's a really interesting one.
Yes. So we have mentioned symbiosis before, but for the people who haven't listened to every podcast that we ever do, so, so symbiosis,
Ever do, yes.
all 220 of them. Symbiosis is a TA. I presume it's just TA term actually, but I don't know. But
Well, in America, it's called codependency.
codependency. I was just going to say
Yeah.
it's our terminology for codependency, and it's where we invite the other into caretaking us, basically. And so and a couple might do this and they might get into where they're sharing just one set of ego states. But one person is usually using the other person. So one person might use the parent and adult ego state and use the other person's and look after the other person's child. But in that process, they ignore their own child ego state. And so they miss themselves whilst they're caretaking the other. And I think it's really common in couples work.
Oh, particularly it's common and particularly common in couples work because they've learned that symbiosis from their early caretaking interactions.
Mm,
So yes, they enact it out with their partners.
yes. Yeah. And it's an unconscious process. So often clients don't recognize what's happening. So, but I like the concept of it, and I like the diagrams of it. I'm a bit of a TA nerd, so but I do like working on the symbiosis and helping couples to separate and individuate.
Mm. Great. So my next is script.
Mhm.
I don't know how quick I can say this in the
That's good.
podcast,
That's a big
but
one,
anyway,
Bob.
I'm going to. So, a definition of script is an unconscious life plan. And another definition might be an unconscious life plan with a beginning, middle, and end. But I think Eric Burns' definition was an unconscious life plan, which you learn in childhood,
Mm,
basically. And I'm not sure I agree with Burns' next bit, actually. By the age of 6 or 7, you've developed this script, if you like,
yeah.
powerless script, or um, and then you follow it out for the rest of your life or enact it out. Uh, I mean, he links it, I'm not sure he does. Yeah, but I think he links it to the existential positions. So, very fun, when he's talking about 6 years, I think he's more talking about at a very basic level. Like I'm okay and you're not okay, or you're not okay and I am okay, or I'm not. Yeah. So, uh, be- and he's talking about it that way, I think. And then you enact that out with people that you meet for the
Mm,
rest of your life. Because as script theory has been developed later on from Byrne, they talk about segments of scripts like a powerless script or a banal script or a harmatic script. Um, but I like the idea, what I like the idea of is that we make our basic existential issues, positions, I'm okay, you're not okay, whatever it is, um, from very early in life, and then we enact it out with people that we meet.
yes.
And underneath that idea, basically, that the past affects the present.
Mm, yeah.
And I probably say that every day of my life in assessments
Mhm.
because I'm talking about what therapy is. And
Yeah.
therapy at a developmental level, fundamentally, is about looking at how the past affects the present, and that's script.
Yes. Yeah.
So if we can get to a way that the person's early decisions, which may mean they have a more confused life plan or unhealthy life plan or script, if we're going to use script language, then we can help them identify that and develop a new script and help them put that on the road and integrate and get new coping mechanisms to have a higher quality of life.
Yes. So for the TA listeners for the non-TA listeners who don't know much about script, we have questionnaires and questions that we ask, and then we have script analysis, don't we? So it's quite an in-depth analysis of people's history.
Yes. Yeah,
Mm.
well, we look for people's injunctions, counter injunctions of drivers, and most important, their early decisions that they still carry on through life,
Yes.
which isn't helping them.
Yes. And they can make different decisions.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay, so next one for you.
I think I'm probably going to go for personality adaptations.
Oh, good. We'll say a little bit about that. That's a later part of theory.
Much later, and so it's is it Van Ian Stewart and Van Joines, the guys who
Mm.
wrote TA Today, and they they didn't create it, did they? I think they just developed it. Somebody else
Mm.
created it. I can't remember who, but it divides us all into 6 personality types, and
Mm.
I think they come from psychiatry, maybe, I'm not sure, but anyway, each type has got a scale, and so for example, the obsessive compulsive scale is the responsible workaholic. So it's one
Mm.
end of the scale is they're very responsible, and the other one is that they can work themselves very hard. Or the schizoid client is very creative, but is also a daydreamer.
Mm.
So, and I just really like how it's a bit of a
Easy.
yes, I'll have to go with easy. Yes, but it's very easily accessible, and it just gives a lot of information just by knowing that. So it's not something that I focus on solely, and that is kind of, I'm not very rigid around it, but I like how it gives a basis of information about certain personality types.
No, it's very good. And there's a book, isn't there, by Pertinent Adaptations by Ian Stewart, who's sadly passed away, and Van Joines.
Yeah, it's really accessible, very easy to read if anybody's interested in exploring that further.
Okay, so another one which people listen to this may or may not like, but I'm gonna, yeah, is contracts.
Oh, yes.
So I like contracts. So I'm a TA therapist and an integrative TA therapist, and I very much like contracts. Now, other people, TA therapists may not like contracts, but for me, contractual theory is at the center of TA.
Yes.
And so Eric Byrne talked as contract is bilateral, specific, and working towards a specific desired outcome. Um, so if we don't get contract, the problem, two or three things can start happening. Number one, you could be working uh, towards your way of thinking what they need to do to change, where the client might have a completely other view of what they're working on. So if you've got a contract, you've got an explicit um, co-created contract between the two of you, and you both know where you're going.
Yes.
Now, you might go other places to get there, but you do have an overall contract where you're going. Secondly, which is really important, I used to live in Gambia for a while, and in Gambia, there's lots of rivers, and you can start off, well, I could anyway, start off on one part of the river and very easily meander down lots of other pathways and suddenly think, oh, where am I? And I like contracts because the contracts provide a sort of rudder or an anchor to get back to where the psychotherapy route needs to be, rather than going off and meandering or being deflected or being manipulated, whatever it is. You've got a rudder to say, oh, that's interesting. And how does that fit in with whatever it is? So I really like contracts. And there's been podcasts I know on contracts which you can look up on my channel as well. There's quite a few half-an-hour videos on contracts and 5-stage contract plan to ask with clients. But I'm a very big fan of contracts.
I'm smiling as you were talking about the rudder, and I thought, oh, maybe we should contract at the beginning of the podcast, and so we don't meander off.
Well, there's a problem with contracts, of course, which is clients will rebel against them and many other things. But I do like contracts.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big fan, and I really like how you can come back to a contract, and it just helps you to kind of re-find your place of like actually.
Yeah. And you can recontract and have new contracts, and you can have sessional contracts.
Yeah, and the contract can change, and you might
Yeah.
need to work on something else.
Yeah. And the contracts need to be at the beginning from an adult to adult place.
Yeah.
So they're explicit and bilateral. So the sense of transparency is it's a direct movement away from the psychoanalytical position that the analyst is an expert and the client is not an expert. So this is a much more co-created adult position. So I really like it.
Yeah, me too. So
what's yours then? What's your next one?
I love the stamp.
Oh yes, yeah.
It comes under rackets.
Yeah.
So for the listeners who aren't TA, the stamp system, we call it collecting stamps, and it's when we get irritated with people and we don't address it, and we say we hold a grudge basically. And the saving of the stamp is a bit, well, they used to say it was like stamps that you would put in a stamp collection to get money off at the supermarket, but I think our equivalent would be Tesco club card points today or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and when we've got enough stamps, then we let the other have it. So that's often where arguments occur, and we're dragging things out from the past, from 3 months ago or 10 years ago, and it's not been dealt with. So I'm a big fan of not saving stamps and addressing an issue when it arises.
Great. I think that's fantastic. And I think in the original theory, you had brown stamps and green stamps, and it's a whole theory about stamps. But I like the way you clearly said that.
Thank you.
Okay, so I honestly could go on, but I'm not going to do it because we probably had a contract at the beginning, about 30 minutes, but I would have loved to talk about script backlash.
Oh, well, we're just at about 32 minutes. So if you want
We'll
to...
stop.
Okay.
We'll stop. Because honestly, the problem with finding me going on is, it'll go on for more than...
Well, yes, and
because TA is such a huge, comprehensive model.
It is, and there's so many more things we could have talked about. So so maybe there's another podcast in this.
Absolutely. So thank you. I enjoyed talking about it, and I enjoyed talking about those fundamental planks of the way I think. Yes,
I enjoyed it too, Bob. I did. So I realise I've not got my list. Let me just pull that up.
What we're doing next week?
Yes. So next week.
What we're doing next week?
Educative therapy. Is it an important part of the therapy process?
That's a really interesting conversation.
I think that the therapeutic world might be a bit split on this.
Yeah.
But well, we shall see.
Well, yes, we might be able to educate them. Anyway, no, seriously.
Lovely.
Seriously, you're absolutely correct. There'll be a split here.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to talking to you about that next time, Bob.
Yeah. See you next week.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We'll be back next week with another episode.